Hey guys, welcome to Adobe Pro Tips. My name is Jacob. Welcome to the stream. It's going to be a ton of fun today. We're going to be learning all about building characters and using a shape builder tool, all the things that we need to build out comprehensive characters, logos, adding those characters into these logos, and working, of course, in Illustrator. Uh, we can just hop right into it now. Where we left off from yesterday, we were working on our menu for our client. And as you can see, now we have some extra characters on our new artboard. Today, like I said, we're going to be learning all about the Shape Builder tool and the Live Paint Bucket tool. These two tools for me are essential for character building in any context for any project. When it comes to line work, when it comes to shapes, when it comes to characters, the Shape Builder tool and the remembering the names of these as well, the Live Paint Bucket tool are just crucial. When you see any vector-based illustrations or characters, you're definitely going to want to keep them in their vector form. And that's something that I have had to learn over the course of a few months of working with Illustrator and understanding the Shape Builder tool. And we're going to go through those examples of, say, what's not necessarily the wrong way to do it, but the way that's not the most efficient for the client. Because the best thing about these vector-based logos and graphics that we're building is they're infinitely scalable. So if you want to put them on something as small as a business card, or if you want to blow them up and put them on something as huge as a billboard, it can be very, very useful for the sake of giving a client a complete product. So what we're going to do today is we're going to show some examples of the right and the wrong. So we can just hop into this artboard right over here. Right here, we have this little circle character, something that I just whipped up really, really quick. I think it kind of encapsulates, a little cute little logo character. And you can see that we have just the basic line set up like we usually do. We have our body, our legs, and our shadows as well, all built with the combination of the line tool, the shape tool with the ellipse, and the pen tool. So you can also go back to some earlier streams and you can see how we built these out as well. When it comes to coloring and getting these shapes actually, or these characters actually looking very lively, we're obviously going to want to add some forms of depth and color in these shapes and shadows. And there's a few ways to go about it. I'll show you the first way that I always used to color in my characters is I would click on the character, I go to object, and I would expand this character. And it would go to the expand option, you go to object, fill, and stroke, click OK, and now you have an expand character. You can see these overlaps on these lines as well too, just means that these objects are connected, and everything is a filled out object now instead of line work, except for the eyeballs. And what I would do is I would click K on the keyboard, which would take us to our Live Paint Bucket tool. And we can just choose any color. I think we'll work in primaries today just for the sake of this demonstration. So I'll go ahead and change my fill to that bluish color, click on my character, click K, and now I can go ahead and start filling in my character with all of these. Same with the shadows. I can just take this color picker, go down to the black, press K, and I can fill in these shadows. Notably, once the character has an initial fill on the character itself, you're not going to have to select the character anymore because it already recognizes it as something that you can fill. And simple enough. Simple character. It works for the demonstration of what we're trying to do, but again, it's not the most efficient way that we can be coloring in our characters. Greatest example of this and the differences is when we're scaling this character up, we can scale, 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 and then these vector-based programs like Illustrator, it is going to retain some of its quality, but once we start to scale things down, it's going to start getting more pixelated. It's going to look a little funky. It's going to be weird, and we just don't want that. So this is an example of a way that you can do it, but it might not be the most efficient way to do it, if that makes sense. Down here, we have our square character. This is going to be an example of, a way that you can do it correctly, but it might not seem like it is working out. And this is also something I struggle with, especially with working with a lot of irregular shapes. it can kind of be a pain in the butt trying to figure out why are my shapes not working with the shape builder tool. And I'll show you that as an example. So with the shape builder tool, it's very similar to the live paint bucket tool. We'll use a red as an example for this one, where you can essentially skip the expand option, and you can just fill in these shapes with whatever colors you want. So we can fill in that leg, fill in the body. But once we get over, and I'll fill in the shadow real quick as well for us. Once we get over to our, let's see, shape builder. Once we get over to this leg, you'll notice that we're having some issues. It looks like that the shadow itself is not wanting to distinguish itself from the leg. So if we color it in, it's going to color in that whole piece. And that can be a bit of a problem, obviously, because we're going to want the shadows to extenuate the actual character itself. There's a few ways you can go about doing this, and I'll show you, again, the way that I went about it. That wasn't necessarily the correct way. So what I would do is I would go in, get this colored in, and click the brush tool and make sure my stroke's on black or whatever color I'm using, and I would just fill that in. Now, again, this is a quick fix, but it's not necessarily the correct fix because we want these characters to be built out in the most efficient and accessible way for our clients. We're just going to fill in these shadows over here with our black. And accessibility and readability for these characters is very important, especially when you're working with a client over multiple products, working with logos over multiple products, because you're going to be reusing these characters, right? They're going to be scaling up and scaling down. The biggest example with why this stroke feature might not be the best is if we go down to our Windows panel, we go to Transform. This is an option I have turned on. It is not turned on by default. So if we turn that off and say we send this over to the client wants to scale up our character. Let's scale up this character. You'll start to see that that line right there is starting to get a little funky and things are starting to look a little weird. You know, our character's thinning out and it's just not, you know, things aren't working correctly. So that can be a problem. And even then, if we go into clicking and choosing the scale and scale corners feature, that's still going to have, you're going to have that one line that's going to be kind of out of place for your vector work, especially when you're sending it over to InDesign designers or people in Photoshop, or it just causes a mess of problems that we don't necessarily want. Now we can go down to our triangle, and then this is an example of a character that we have all set up. I should probably mention as well, I didn't mean to gloss over this, the reason that our character is having so many issues with that leg is we go ahead and remove some of these colors. Let's get rid of, whoops. Let's get rid of that. So just take one moment. Perfect. So once we remove this, we can zoom in pretty close on this character, and you'll start to notice something the closer that you get into it, that these are not connected. From far away, that's not something you would ever notice. And for me, this was a big problem because of the fact that it was something that I didn't know would affect the shape builder tool. That is the most important part of the shape builder tool, is you want to make sure that all of your characters are connected, and you want to make sure that they're all, or I should say all of your points are connected and all of your lines are very consistent across the character itself. And you know, you can go into this and you can take these points and fill them out as you go, or in the example of this triangle, you can just make sure that these things are covered right off of the base. So what we did with this character as opposed to these two characters, and you'll notice as well, to give another example, this was an example of a line that wasn't fully connected for this character, which is why the shape builder tool would not have worked for this character. But with this character, we went in, we took our time, we designed it out, and we made sure that every single point on this character that's touching another point is fully connected. You may run into some issues with overlapping or with, issues like this, where you have a point that is maybe overlapping a shape like in this area, or coming over a little bit further, or that's just missing these points. And all you want to do is just click the A button. You can highlight both of these to kind of use as a guide. Click on that anchor point and bring it until it snaps into place. Looks like for this one, we were pretty far off. Right about there. Perfect. So you'll see with this as an example for this triangle, we'll just go back to the shape builder tool, choose a green, do like this color. And you can see all of these shapes are now fillable. And this is great for our client because this just makes this much more easier to work with. So click on these. And now we have a consistent colored in shape with the shape builder tool. It's still its outlines. So again, if we go down to the window, transform tab, and if we click on these scale corners, then when we scale this up, it's going to proportionately and infinitely scale with our project, which is exactly what we're looking for, as opposed to with this character, the further we scale it up, it's not retaining that same outline size. It's kind of starting to look a little funky, a little more blurry, but you get the idea. So now that we've kind of gone through our shape builder tool, we can see how this can help us build out our logos to work, or I should say our icons to work into our logos and work into our characters. We'll go ahead and open up a new artboard on this tab here. We'll bring over our night shift character and logo. Like I said, for this specific client, they provided us with a logo for the night shift brand, a typeface logo, I should say, which is very useful for what we're trying to do. Saves us a lot of time and gives us a little bit of flexibility in terms of the character itself. I'm just going to group these up, get them all centered, and ungroup them. And first things first, what we want to do is we want to obviously color in our character. For most examples, when it comes to coloring in characters, I do not go too in-depth in the color studies, because one thing that we're going to have to consider is the background of this product, this menu could change. The typeface, the color of the actual font itself could change. The character could change. We would have to send multiple revisions. So for this example, typically what I like to do is I like to just have a general basic color down. It can be anything that's very punchy, so I could do like a lime green, a pink, or something like that if I want it to be distinguished, or if I want it to just kind of blend in with the background and kind of get a general idea, I can do like just the solid gray, black, white color scale. So in this case, I am going to stick with that gray, black, and white color scale just to make this work for us. So what I'll do is I am going to make a quick edit for this shadow. And let's see. I want to rebuild out this character. Just make a quick edit. So we'll go ahead and do this, just to make it a little easier for us to work with. So I'll go ahead. Oh, sorry, I had something in my eye. And we'll just cut this right at the path. Perfect. I didn't really like how that shadow looked as of waking up this morning, so I just wanted to make that quick edit for us. So what we can do is we can highlight our whole character. We can go to the shape builder tool and we can go through that process that we talked about before, which is just filling in these shapes. And you can see we're already having that issue, and that is because I did not go as in depth as I should have with connecting my characters, which is learning from our mistakes. And what we might be able to do to work around this is if, there we go, that worked out. So we just moved over the anchor points to fit correctly. So what we'll do is we will highlight our character, go to our shape builder tool, and click on the black swatch 0, 0, 0. And we'll just go ahead and fill in these shadows. Looks like we have a little bit of a disconnected point again. So what we can do as we're working is just kind of start sliding these on path and fixing these mistakes. And working in as you go with these characters can be kind of unavoidable when it comes to this process, and that is totally okay. Looks like we're still having some connective issues. So we'll just fiddle around with this until we make sure all of our stuff is connected correctly. All right, let's try that. Still a little bit of issues, which is funny. This was working for us before. That's okay. For the sake of time, we can just kind of gloss over this leg at the moment. Sometimes when it comes to building out these characters, it does take a little bit of time to figure out where your points are not connecting correctly. That's totally okay. For a demonstration, we can kind of go back to the old way of just filling in those points to kind of represent what we're trying to do. So what we'll do is we will work the shape builder tool where we can. Go ahead and fill in all of this with our colors. And for these specific top points, we want to just make sure that they are like this, because if we do work in the shape builder tool, because of these intersecting lines, they will tend to make that connecting point. Same with this one here. So we've got our general idea for our character down. I am just going to, again, use our cardinal sin, but just as an example to fill this in for the sake of time. Go ahead and group these together and kind of get an idea of where our character is going to be placed on our logo. One really cool effect I enjoy when it comes to building out characters is I love to kind of overlap them over the initial font or the logo for the restaurant or for the client themselves, just because I feel like it adds a little bit of depth to it. And what I've been doing even more recently to give it more of a distinguished look, I should say, is you can see how with the outline of this clock character, it kind of starts to blend in a little bit with the logo of the client. So what we can do is we can copy this, bring our layers panel up, click Shift Command V, and it'll add a copy, obviously, directly of this character. We can click on the one at the bottom, we can go to Object, Expand Appearance. Then we can go down to our Pathfinder tool, and we can click on Unite, which I can see why we're having some overlapping issues because this is not colored in. So we should do that real quick. Let's see. Actually, you know what we can do? We can go here we can take that Unite color and we can make it white. So that'll be our workaround for now. And what we can do is once we have that character united, or I should say that background united, we can go to our stroke and we can bring up the weight of that stroke, probably not to 10, maybe to about, let's say 3 looks good to me, maybe even 2. Perfect. Looks like we're having some, I see what's going on here. So this is an example of running into issues with those outlines over time because of the little squiggle that we did over here. So what I want to do, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit, remove this top layer, and we're going to remove all of these squiggles on our background layer, just so we don't have that weird like bulging look. We'll go ahead and click on our bottom group, do the same, object expand, go to the Unite tab, or go to, the Unite tab, click on Unite, and then we will change that color to white, and we will add that stroke. Woo, too big of a stroke. So go down to about 2. We'll round out all those edges so they're nice and smooth. Come over to our strokes panel, and then we'll slide it up to white. And this just adds a little bit of a stroke outline to our character, which I really appreciate and I like when it comes to this character design and trying to make logos pop and characters kind of blend into these fonts for specific clients. So what we can do is we can copy these characters over, and we can kind of start messing around with, we'll group this together just so those outlines stay together. We can start messing around with the orientation. It's another thing I love to do. Again, running into that issue with those lines not being filled out. Let me go ahead and fix that for us real quick. Just add a bit of a white stroke, white fill, I should say, to this. Do the same for this. Add a white fill, and we'll just bring these up to the top. Or try to, at least. There we go. So now we should have a little more breathing room. Perfect. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of just messing around with the orientation of this character. I want to see how it fits in different styles and in different locations for this logo. So kind of move this up a little bit, kind of get a general idea. Let's go ahead and get everything centered for us. Group everything together. Get everything nice and together. Perfect. So now kind of looking at our logos, I kind of like to get an idea and a vision of, what we're going for. And what we can even do to go a bit of a step further is we can add more artboards. This is something that I am guilty of not doing, and I think it's really useful to take advantage of, is using your artboards and giving yourself multiple examples to work within your space in Adobe Illustrator. So what we can do is bring up our artboards. We'll add 3 more just for the sake of this demonstration. And what we can do is we can copy over our initial design. We'll bring it over, we'll center it to this artboard, we'll group, center, and what we'll do is we will just use, kind of a eyeball to center ours, because it's not going to fully line up. Actually, what we could even do to make sure that things are lining up and our bounding boxes are correct is we can just use that expand option. So now that when we're grouping, it's going to be correct to our character. We'll use that on this one as well. Perfect. So now our bounding boxes are in our correct spot. So what we'll do is we'll just center everything, copy over, and center it to each artboard. So we'll go like this. Perfect. And we'll go ahead and delete these top parts for us, and we can go ahead and start copying over our characters. Get them centered up. Probably want to expand all of these. And this is how my process looks for when it comes to trying to build out any pitch decks for my clients. I want to give them as much example as possible across as wide of a variety of options as possible as well. So we'll expand this. Perfect. We'll get this centered. I'm already not liking this one because it is going over our bleed line, but we'll roll with it. And we'll make sure this one is the same as this. We'll group everything together. And just like that, we have 3 options ready for our client. And it's as simple as that. Now we have our logos built out, ready for to send off for final approval. And we will be able to give our client a pretty full option. I hope you enjoyed this demonstration. Thank you for hanging out with us for this pro tips. Make sure to stick around for some more pro tips and some more live streams later today. And yeah, hope you learned some stuff, and have a great day, guys. See ya.